Welcome to the Orca. This weekend in Vancouver, hundreds of BC Liberal leaders, members, and volunteers will gather in Vancouver for the party's policy convention. Now, this convention has a theme called Winning Takes Work, and it will include substantive policy debates on everything from the future of ICBC to agricultural policy. Emile Scheffel is the executive director of the BC Liberal Party. He's putting this convention together, but first he joins us here in the Orca studio. Hello there.
Hello, Rick. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, and congrats to you and the team at the Orca for what you've pulled off in a couple of months here. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Winning takes work. What does that mean?
So, we have these conventions every 2 years, and this is my third one as either. So I was a staff person in 2014 at our Kelowna convention, and that was kind of a post-victory celebration. We had won the 2013 election when everybody had counted us out, said it couldn't be done. So it was our way of saying, hey, look, we pulled this off despite the odds being stacked against us. I had the honor of being asked to be a co-chair of the 2016 convention a couple of autumns ago in Vancouver, and that was all about firing ourselves up for the 2017 election. In that election, we, as a government that had been in power for 16 years, the tide was against us. As you know, we won the most seats, we won the most votes, but it was not quite enough to form a durable majority government. And so over the past year and a half, BC Liberals throughout the province have been taking a look at what happened in that election, why we are where we are on the opposition benches, not in government anymore, really taking stock, reevaluating who do we need to be as a party to be successful? What does the path to victory look like? So I think that statement, our theme, really sums it up. In order to win, you need to do work, and that means not just knocking on doors, not just talking to and listening to British Columbians. It means actually looking at the party, stripping it down on the bones and saying, okay, what do we stand for? What are the values that hold us together? At our core, what are we offering your British Columbians? That's the hard work that we're going to not complete, but at least start at this convention.
To many observers, though, policy conventions, well, frankly, they can be a cure for insomnia. What do you do to fire up Liberals now? And how do you change your policy to make it more attractive to the BC voters?
Yeah, so, when we were in government, there was, at all these policy conventions, an element of, I think it's fair to say, risk management. Government has an agenda, it has fiscal constraints. So as grassroots folks are coming up with policies, there's always kind of a tension between sort of how the government agenda is moving forward and what the grassroots are calling for in terms of policy. And we were able to work through that, and I think that broadly grassroots felt like they had a really good say. Grassroots BC Liberals felt like they had a really good say in the direction of the government. As an opposition party now, though, as we start to look to what are we offering the next election, what does our platform look like, the voice of the grassroots is that much stronger and more relevant and more powerful than it ever was in government. So what we're doing, Rick, at this convention is spending a lot more time talking about policy in different formats than we have at past conventions. As we speak right now, almost 1,000 delegates are getting the opportunity to vote online for which resolutions they want to see prioritized when they get to convention. On the Friday, we're going to do 2+ hours of policy breakout sessions broken down by theme. So delegates will really get to dig into the details, into the guts of those policies and workshop them and amend them, do the work that needs to be done. And then on the Saturday, we're going to bring everybody back together, go through the policies that have made it out of the breakouts into the main session, open up the mics and have a really strong, well-informed airing of both sides of each resolution. So I think it's going to be a really healthy debate for our party.
How much will you look in the rearview mirror and deal with some issues that the previous government has been saddled with? I think of casinos, money laundering, and I think of what EB has called the dumpster fire at ICBC. Both of those happened under your watch as a Liberal government. How do you deal with those?
I think it's important to acknowledge that if we had been perfect as a government, we'd still be in government, right? So I think, as I said, it's an opportunity to be really clear-eyed about the areas where we fell short in the last election. As you know, did really well in the interior, did really well in the north of the province, fell way short of where we needed to be in the lower mainland and as well on the island. Looking ahead to a by-election in Nanaimo, thinking about areas where we historically have not been as strong is going to be really critical. So as far as I'm concerned at this convention, very few topics are off the table. It's got to be a wide open conversation about who we are as a party and where we want to go, and that's what I'm really excited about.
But do you think you have to own those before you can move forward?
I think it's important to talk about them in a really frank and candid way, and that's why having those open mics for delegates to speak their minds is going to be so important. I talked about the policy debates, which are an important part of it, but I'll also mention that on this Sunday we're going to do what we're calling the strategy session, which is not going to be smart folks standing on stage talking about what the strategy is. There'll be an element of talking about where we're heading as a party on the strategic and the tactical side. But what we're going to do there, again, is open the mics up and hear directly from delegates. Where do you think we maybe have more work to do? What do you think the priorities ought to be as a party member out there in the field? And get that two-way conversation going. Because we want to make sure that the folks at headquarters, the folks in the caucus in Victoria, aren't insulated from the broader BC Liberal movement. They're directly and in a very visceral way in touch with it.
This happens this coming weekend, shortly after the convention. Your leader, Mr. Wilkinson, is in a debate with Mr. Horgan about proportional representation. I'd like your thoughts on proportional representation and why you think it's bad.
Well, I appreciate you asking, Rick. First of all, we're delighted that debate is happening. It was Andrew's idea to make sure the public was as informed as possible. We would have liked it to happen earlier while more people still had their ballots. It took about a month and a bit for John Horgan to actually agree to do the debate, and a bit longer for the details to actually come together. But in terms of my view on proportional representation, I mean, as you know, it's a complex topic, and we could do a multi-hour long podcast on that alone. What it comes down to for me at the most basic level, not just as a BC Liberal, but as a citizen of BC, is that in our current system, you get to pick a politician, you get to pick a party on the basis of what they're promising. You look at what's in their platform and you try and match that up with your values and your priorities. And once they're elected and they form a government, you're able to measure them according to whether they deliver on that platform. And what scares me, what really concerns me about any of the three forms of proportional representation is the loss of that direct accountability, the dilution of local representation, but more than that, the fact that politicians and parties can run on whatever platform they please, but as soon as they get into the legislature and they're trying to cobble together a workable government, a workable coalition from a whole bunch of disparate parties with different competing agendas, all of those promises they made to voters go out the window. Everything is on the table, everything is up for horse trading, and it's impossible to actually hold politicians directly accountable for keeping their promises. So that's what really frightens me about the direction the governance would go if we were to see proportional representation go through.
How important is this referendum for the future of the Liberal coalition in British Columbia?
I mean, it's important for all British Columbians. In terms of our coalition, I've always been, to some degree amazed and impressed by the range of different viewpoints that is held together within the BC Liberal coalition. It has worked very well for a long time. It works very well to a degree in a different form under social credit. I think that it remains to be seen how proportional representation passing would affect that coalition. I do want to make one really important point, though, which is that because of the way the NDP has structured the rules for this referendum, the mail-in ballot, the short window of time, the extreme limitations on the way that groups like the BC Liberal Party, like the yes and no groups, can communicate with voters, we could be looking at extraordinarily low participation. So as far as we're concerned, even if proportional representation succeeds on the ballot, if that turnout is low, let's say it's below 60% or below 50%, and an even smaller proportion of people have actually chosen the model of proportional representation that gets the most support, I don't believe that the government is going to have a mandate to push through the enabling legislation to actually bring proportional representation through. So to my mind, I know that ICBA and other groups are currently in court, I think as recently as yesterday, around the validity of this referendum. So as far as we're concerned, the fight isn't over when the ballots are counted. It's actually potentially just beginning.
I want to get back to your policy convention this weekend, and what do you see as topic number one for the general membership of the BC Liberal Party this weekend?
Well, I can give you a small exclusive, which is that as voters as delegates are ranking the policies they want to see come up for debate, the one that is at the top of the rankings right now by country mile is the idea of breaking up the ICBC monopoly and fundamentally changing how we do auto insurance in terms of consumer choice and competition in BC. I'm in charge of making sure the process proceeds in a neutral and fair way, so I'm not going to take a position on that question. But I can tell you that's certainly the most live issue as far as our delegates are concerned, and looking forward to a really healthy and vibrant debate around that on the floor.
Enjoy the convention.
Thank you very much, Rick. Look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.